So I made all. I know they come and they get surprised.
I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. Evening, everyone. Before we start, I'd just like to make mention that on Sunday, you all know about the tragedy that occurred in Calabasas. 9 people lost their lives, parents with their children, and of course, Kobe Bryant and his daughter, Gianna. They were headed to the Mamba Sports Academy right here in Thousand Oaks, and to honor those 9 lives that they're lost, after the Pledge of Allegiance, if you would remain with me in a moment of silence, we'd appreciate it. So let's stand for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have the roll call, Ms. Rodriguez.
Councilmember Engler,
Here.
Councilmember Jones,
Here.
Councilmember McCoy,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Bill De La Pena,
Present.
and Mayor Adam.
And I am here. All right, tonight I'm going to call Heather Cousin down to the podium. She is our director of our library, and she's working on a great program called One City, One Book. Heather, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Good evening. I'd like to ask TOTV if they could put up our program guide there. Thank you very much. So last year, we took you to the not-so-distant reaches of our solar system with rocket men and traveled with the astronauts of Apollo 8 as they attempted to circle the moon and return. This year, our adventure is a little closer to home, but nonetheless challenging, and in some ways, even a little bit more perilous. In her memoir, The Honey Bus, the story opens with 5-year-old Meredith May trying to make sense of a world that seems to be spiraling out of control. Her parents have separated. She, her mother, and her brother have moved from Rhode Island to the central coast of California, leaving everything and everyone she's ever known. Forging a close bond with her grandfather, a beekeeper, May quickly comes to appreciate the order and rhythm of the bee colonies he watches over. May's memoir is a tribute to the unfailing love and support of her grandfather and her attempt to understand the seemingly unknowable. Whether it be the actions of those around us or the acts of nature, science has yet to reveal. Once again, we are very grateful to partner with the Friends of the Thousand Oaks Library and California Lutheran University to present a fantastic slate of programs, beginning with our kickoff concert featuring the Newbury Park High School Orchestra on February 29th. The programs will continue through the months of March and April with a screening of the award-winning documentary, The Biggest Little Farm, a tour of California Lutheran Seed Project, or the Sustainable Edible Education Program, concerts, book discussions, a photo contest, mental health resource fair, and programs for children as well. This will culminate with a visit with author Meredith May on Sunday, April 26th at 2 p.m. in the Kavli Theater. We hope you will once again join us in celebrating our ability to open a book together so that we may close it in greater harmony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Heather. And thank you for the book. And not everyone knows that Councilmember McCoy is a beekeeper. Are you not, Rob? This is true. And he likes to give out the honey to his fellow council members. Thank you.
I've had some of the honey. It's very good.
Okay. Thank you, Ed. All right. I'm going to go to our city manager because this evening we have a special thoughts to share with Jay Spurgeon, our retiring Public Works Director. So, Drew, would you kick that off?
Absolutely. Wanted to take a minute, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and the community to acknowledge one of our stalwart members of the city's executive team, a face that's known to so many across this community, Mr. Jay Spurgeon. Jay, if you'll come down to the podium just for a moment, because I know the council will have some comments for you as well. After decades of service with us, this is Jay's final city council meeting, and everyone calculates their retirement in different ways. Jay was jokingly giving me tallies of the number of council meetings that he had attended over the years, and I just want to take a special moment to acknowledge Jay. He has been such a tremendous public servant for this community for so many years. His customer service ethic is really unparalleled. He holds up what we aspire to be within our organization. He'll go out and meet with anyone in the field at any time of day or night, whether it's emergencies or dealing with little tricky problems out in the public right-of-way. He has been such an asset for our organization in so many ways. One in particular that stands out for me is his work on the Cal-Am water rate case. He was literally been our organizational expert on this and helping to advocate on behalf of residents and businesses in that area when we were dealing with a very, very complicated rate case. And you look around this community, Jay's fingerprints are on so many aspects of what makes Thousand Oaks a special place, and he has built a remarkable team. One of the biggest tributes to Jay is that he helped groom his successor. And when Jay and I started having conversations about his retirement about a year ago, having him work closely with Cliff Finley, who is our incoming director, to prepare him in that mold has been so valuable for our organization and is really a tribute to his leadership. So I just wanted to take a minute to acknowledge him tonight. I know, Mr. Mayor, you may want to say a few words yourself.
Thank you, Drew. Yeah, Jay, wow, done a heck of a job. I know I've been told many times when I have questions, call Jay. He'll know, and you always do. Great communicator with the public, great face of the city, patient and intelligent, explains things properly to people. Got our Public Works Department accredited with the National Public Works is it Society or
Association. Yeah.
Association, which is actually a huge honor. Yes. We have the best streets in the county every year. Hill Canyon model plant in sustainability, copied around the nation, and you've been responsible for all that. So great job, Jay. And now it's off to the world of RVing, correct? Is that right, Jay?
Amongst other things, yes.
Amongst other things, okay. All right. Claudia, do you want to say something?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Adam. Having been, or being the only council member left now who's worked with you the most, I want to say that Mr. Finley has some big shoes to fill. And I know you will do well, but Mr. Jay Spurgeon has been phenomenal as a community liaison and explaining public works so very extremely well to the residents when it came to water rates especially. And I will never forget when, 7 years ago or so, you and I drove down to Culver City, was it?
Carson,
yes. There you go. And fought vehemently against a water rate increase suggested by a California water company this time. And we were successful thanks to you. You had done your research, you were prepared, and that was a pretty big battle. And from California Water Company, we move on now to Cal-Am Water. So you will be leaving your thumbprint on everything water in the city of Thousand Oaks. But of course, you did a lot more than just handle water. And I have to say that you have been one of the most ethical, upstanding, dignified individuals working for the city of Thousand Oaks and all of its residents that I have ever had the pleasure of working with. So thank you very much for your many years of service. You've been a phenomenal public works director, and I will miss you a big deal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember McCoy?
Jay, when I was first elected and had to get a tour of City Hall and see all the departments, it was like drinking from a fire hydrant. I didn't know my elbow from my earlobe. And I have to say that not only are you an excellent manager, but you're a wonderful teacher. You took time to explain things to me. You walked me through everything the city had to do in relation to public works. And my favorite event of the year is a public works breakfast. Just to walk in and see the enthusiasm in the room and the culture of excellence that you've established there. And it reflects to your leadership. You've left the place better than you found it. And just watching you, it's not a job, it's a calling. And you have done a remarkable job. And I'm honored to be a council member of a city that has this culture of excellence, and you are to be commended because you set that bar. One last thing is, I'm going to miss you because not only do I appreciate you just being on the council, but you're a good guy and you're a lot of fun to be around. You're funny sometimes, and I really do appreciate you, and I wish you the best. You deserve it. So go have fun, and remind your wife what you look like because you've been busy here at the city, and especially during all the crisis we had, you never slept. So thank you. God bless you on your well-deserved break.
Thank you so much.
Councilmember Engler?
Thank you, Mayor. Jay, I'm one of the new people on the council, so I haven't had a chance to work with you closely since I've been a council member. However, you were the first city staff that I ever met, and that was years ago. And from that moment forward, I've never come to you with a request that you haven't met. I've never seen you get impatient with any of my requests. That is your nature. And most people don't realize, but our public works department that Jay headed up is the department that has the most contact with our residents. It's the one that if it wasn't there, you would certainly know about it quickly. And Jay has made it move so swiftly and so smoothly that we get very, very few complaints. And that's a credit to you and your associates. So thank you very much.
Councilmember Jones?
You know, Mr. Mayor, you mentioned that we have the best streets and sidewalks and so forth in the county, and I believe that. But that called to mind the fact that our esteemed Mr. Spurgeon does not actually live in the city. He lives in an area that anybody would believe is in the city. It's an area we call Casa Caneo. In the early days when I was involved, we thought they would be so impressed by this wonderful city, they wouldn't miss a chance to annex, but they never did. And I'm thinking now, I'm talking about both sides of Wendy. If you leave the freeway and drive south to Borchard, that's Casa Caneo. They were not in the original incorporation because there had been a failed incorporation just prior to that where they couldn't come in. But now I'm thinking that maybe a native Casa Caneoan, as you are, would be interested in trying to get your fellow neighbors to consider, even at this, late date, to
Jay, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Just finally, I have walked those streets many times running for the park board and the board of supervisors, and I know about cracked sidewalks, et cetera, et cetera. Wouldn't that be an inspiration as a dedicated public works person all your life, or most, to want to initiate or try to persuade your fellow Casa Caneoans that might be a good idea?
Councilmember Jones, just because you don't want to retire, don't make that happen with Jay.
Now, how am I supposed to take that? I don't quite know. A kid like me.
Not an
anyway, just think about that. And I would say I would just echo, I don't know, every time I get a complaint about something that needs done in the public works area, I pass it on to you, and it's just done like that. So, Cliff, I hope you maybe have Jay instruct you just a little bit about that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But seriously, best wishes. You're one of the best staff people I ever worked with, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you, Councilmember Jones. Jay?
Well, I am
few
humbled
words.
by all your comments, and so thank you for all of that. Councilmember Jones, if a vote is put before me, I will vote yes to join the city for
Now
certain.
we only needed about 2,000 more.
Just about, yeah,
and
just
we're
something
there.
like that, yeah. But it's really, I mean, it's been my honor, my privilege to end my career working for this organization, which is by far the best in my career of 36 plus years. I've lived in this community over 30 years, and you know what, I am part of the city, notwithstanding my resident address, but you know, all the things that this city enjoys, its infrastructure, yes, every resident touches public works multiple times every day. Councilmember Engler, you're absolutely right, and we don't take that lightly. I certainly don't, and it works because of all the people in this department. They're dedicated, they're professional, they're caring, they're talented, and they make me look good. And I so appreciate them, and I will miss working with them. I'll miss working with all you. You know, it all starts here. That culture and that excellence starts with the five of you giving us the goals and setting the vision. And then, you know, I just happen to have the privilege of a great staff, a great department to be able to go out and accomplish all those things. So, yeah, I'm going to have some fun. It's hard to believe yet, still, in some ways, that it's happening. But thank you so much. And again, it's been my honor to serve here. So,
Thank you for all you've done for the city, Jay.
yes.
All righty. And now we're on to the consent calendar. And oh, no, we're not. We're on to public comments. Beg your pardon. Ms. Rodriguez, if you would, please.
This is a time and place for public comments. A speaker card is available for those wishing to address the City Council regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. All remarks should be addressed to the council as a whole, and all documents for City Council and the official record should be presented to the city clerk prior to speaking. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. Under state law, public comment matters may not be considered by council unless listed on the agenda, but may be referred to the city manager for administrative follow-up. One individual has presented a speaker card, and pursuant to council standards, speakers are allowed 3 minutes, and the yellow light displays when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. Our speaker tonight is Dan Garcia. Will you please state your name and city of residence? Good evening, Dan.
Good evening, Mayor Adam and council members of Thousand Oaks. My name is Dan Garcia. I am the Manager of Government Affairs and Tourism for the Greater Conejo Valley Chamber, your local chamber, and I am here on behalf of our Board of Directors and our President and CEO, Danielle Borgia. We have forwarded you a letter from us and our board, and you've probably already read it, but I'm here just to reiterate some of those things that were written on there and to express our support for one of the items on the agenda, specifically item number 9D, the exclusive franchise solid waste agreements. And I want to take a quick read as part of that letter. With regard to the requirements of our solid waste handlers, it is clear from the city's staff reports for this item under consideration that both Waste Management and Newberry Disposal have met and in many cases exceeded the requirements placed upon them. They have risen to the challenges posed by new legislation that has made their job more difficult to manage. In addition to meeting and exceeding the specific requirements of their agreements, these chamber members' businesses are also important community partners. They support countless local nonprofit organizations that serve the community at large and are involved with area schools promoting recycling and environmental education. Their employees are also part of the fabric that our business community and are committed to serving the businesses and residents of Thousand Oaks. I, along with the Chamber of Commerce, urge you to move forward with an extension of their franchise solid waste agreements. And if you have any questions regarding our position and them, please contact the Chamber of Commerce. And since they are here, I would like to take this opportunity to thank publicly everybody from that organization. Thank you so much for the important and vital role that you play in our community. And unless there's any questions, that is all.
Thank you, Dan. And I believe that's all the public speakers we have this evening. So let us move on to the consent calendar. And if I'm correct, I believe Mayor Pro Tem, you had an item you wanted pulled?
7K.
7K. All right. Can I get a motion for the remainder?
Also,
Hold that. I do have a speaker for the consent calendar. And that is Barbara Thomas. And you're speaking on item 7I. Good evening.
Yes, sir,
Barbara.
that is correct. My name is Barbara Thomas. I am a resident of the city of Thousand Oaks. I would like to thank the city council for considering the approval of the appropriation of funds for capital improvements at the Rancho Potrero Community Equestrian Center. And I would also like the council to take into consideration going forward, moving forward with whatever bidding process and so on that needs to happen to get a permanent management system in there, whether that be right-on or whether it go out for bid. But if the council could move forward, because we would really love to see the center fully operational again. We'd love to see the rental string back. I know that the public, I know people come over just from across the street just to, unwind and decompress and pet the horses and see everything. And the kids love to go out and ride. Parents love to take their kids. It's a really important facility to have over there. And just like all of our other sports facilities in the city, it's one that brings the public together in a very good and positive way, allows people to get into the open space and enjoy nature. So thank you for considering this, and I would like to see it move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. And we have a second speaker, Karen Curtis. All right. Very good. So we've got a motion to pull 7K, and
my motion was to
I beg your
approve
pardon.
everything but
Okay.
7K.
all right, well, I can take the motion for the remainder. And Bob, did you want to speak to 7K then?
No, I was going to jump in, but
Oh,
Councilman
okay.
Jones already did.
I got you. All right, well, let's go with Councilmember Jones, a motion to pass the consent calendar, and then we'll go to Mayor Pro Tem for 7K. Oh, all right, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to respond to Ms. Thomas briefly that at the meeting that you had at the Ride-On on the 13th of January, it was explained that the rental string is coming back, and in fact, a portion of it is already coming back, trail lessons, and then, so all of that is coming back. And Ride-On, we know, has been doing a very good job keeping the facility above board and improving it a great deal. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So can we get a vote on the balance of the consent calendar, please?
The motion carries 5-0, and I do have a couple ordinance titles to read for those.
All right, should we
Two
do
items?
7K first? You want to?
Sure.
All right, why don't we go to Mayor Pro Tem for 7K?
Thank you. Yes, I was made aware today about the schedule change, and thank you to the city clerk for that, that we normally have the reorganization around the 6th, 7th, or 8th after the election, and then we have a full council meeting on the following week, and we've had that for many years, and this would change that rhythm or tradition or pattern that we've had. So I was suggesting to have the reorganization on December 8th, and then the council meeting on the, is it 15th? On the 15th, just to keep with past practice.
All right. May I suggest that we poll the council members?
Correct, that's why I'm
Okay,
putting
very
that
good.
May
forward.
I ask a question, Mr. Mayor?
And if I may, just really quick for context, I wanted to have the city clerk speak to it. The reason for the shift, there's a couple shifts in schedule, but one of the main reasons is the county will be putting new election equipment in place this year, just for the public to know. And so this is an election year, and so certification is required for that meeting to ensure that everything is done correctly. So I'll let Cindy speak to that. Obviously, it's the pleasure of the council how you choose to handle scheduling items, but I'll let Cindy give context.
Yes, when we're preparing the meeting schedule, we did look at the past 4 elections going back to 2012, and generally, we do receive, on average, we receive the election results from the county on the 23rd day after the election. So we recently were having conversations with the county on other matters, and we did mention to them, hey, we did schedule our reorg on December 1st, which is the 28th day. Do you have any concerns? They did respond that this is a presidential election this year, and they would prefer to have the full 30 days. And Drew did mention, our city manager did mention on another note that in addition, they do have new election equipment that is another factor to consider. So given that information, staff prepared the proposed change in the reorg from the 1st to the 15th to accommodate the county's request for the full 30 days. I do want to add that staff, just prior to the meeting, did look at our past 4 reorg dates that occurred after the election and found that the city council reorganization in 2016 after that election occurred on the 2nd meeting date, which occurred on December 13th, and that was due to the fact that the election occurred on November 8th that year. So that was my only other comment.
All right, thank you. It's a fairly new development, and we have to December. It's nothing urgent. So, Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Bill LaPena would like to have this item poll the council members and bring it back next time.
That would be fine, yes.
All right,
Thank
so
you.
that's the motion?
But I do think you want to effectuate the change in April.
Oh, yeah,
Correct.
absolutely. We're
That's what
doing the
I just wanna-
change in April. This is just the second part. Okay. So we got a motion on the floor. If we could get a vote on that, please.
Councilmember, the motion carries 5-0, and if I could read those 2 ordinance titles.
Yes.
Ordinance amending Section 8-1.26 of the Municipal Code of the City of Thousand Oaks regarding electrical vehicle charging stations, MCA 2019-70991, Ordinance Number 1676NS, and Ordinance amending the Thousand Oaks Municipal Code, repealing in its entirety Chapter 2 to Title 6, and adding Chapter 2 to Title 6, adopting regulations for solid waste, organic waste, and recyclable materials collection, processing, and disposal, Ordinance Number 1677NS.
All right, thank you very much. Now we are on to our department reports, and we have with us tonight the chair of TO Arts, the very capable Leanne Nielsen. And if not to embarrass you, Leanne, but you were just recently named Woman of the Year by the Greater Conejo Valley Chamber of Commerce. I think that deserves a round of applause.
Thank you.
It's a high honor, believe me. But tonight, you're here as the chair of TO Arts, and you're going to give us our semi-annual report.
Yes.
It's all
Thank
yours.
you, Mayor Adam and city council members. On behalf of the Thousand Oaks Alliance for the Arts Board of Directors, it is my pleasure to present our report covering TO Arts operations and programming for the last 6 months, ending December 31st, 2019. Tonight, I will provide you with a brief overview of some of the highlights contained in our report. Eloise Cohen, Al Lowe, and Janet Shear were elected as board directors for 3-year terms running through December 31st, 2022. Eloise Cohen and Janet Shear were elected to serve to a second term, and Al Lowe was elected to fill a seat vacated by Bob Beery, who has opted to now serve as a member of the TO Arts Advisory Council. In keeping with the Memorandum of Understanding between the City and TO Arts, the director appointments were ratified by City Council at your meeting on January 14th. David Mead was elected Board Vice Chair, and Eloise Cohen was elected Secretary for 2-year terms running through December 31st, 2021. The TO Arts Advisory Council is comprised of 23 leaders from all sectors of the local community and formally meets twice a year. Their most recent meeting took place in September to discuss the 25th anniversary celebration of the Bank of America Performing Arts Center, and members were provided with a sneak peek tour of the renovations to the Kavli Theater. Several advisory council members served on the planning committee for the anniversary curtain-up celebration dinner and concert. The independent auditor retained by TO Arts is currently finalizing the audit report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019. The final report will be presented to the board for approval in February or March. TO Arts actually maintains 3 different budgets. The board adopted a fiscal year 1920 operating budget of $970,421, which is a significant increase over TO Arts' prior year budget. In addition, we also maintain separate budgets for CAP Presents programming and the concessions operations for the Kavli Theater and Shear Forum. The combined operations, programming, and concessions budgets for fiscal year 1920 total $3.68 million. In November, TO Arts held its annual planning retreat with the board and staff to update the organization's strategic work plan through 2021. The retreat discussion focused on board development, maximizing the effectiveness of our current grant programs, and developing a transition plan to minimize the impact of the retirement of the TO Arts Executive Director in March 2020. The board tracks the progress of the work plan at its monthly meetings in order to monitor the implementation and completion of goals and action items. TO Arts now enjoys the support of over 200 businesses and individual donors who provide financial and in-kind contributions in support of our programs and activities. In fiscal year 18-19, these contributions totaled over $225,000. The TO Arts Producers Club membership program continues to grow, and as of the end of December, it now has 65 individuals and businesses who have contributed an annual gift of at least $1,000, with many members committing to multi-year commitments. A new Audience Circle membership program has recently been launched, with members pledging a monthly contribution of between $10 and $75. In July, TO Arts reached an agreement with Premier American Credit Union to purchase the naming rights for the History Wall, which was unveiled in the Kavli Theater lobby during the 25th anniversary activities. This represents a financial contribution to TO Arts of $250,000 in exchange for naming rights for a period of 10 years. And you may remember from our last report, we announced that Best Western Plus Thousand Oaks Inn purchased the naming rights for the autograph wall, also for $250,000. I would like to congratulate our development director, Nikki Richardson, for raising $500,000 in naming rights revenue over the last year, which will be deposited into the endowment fund that supports the Bank of America Performing Arts Center theater operations. In September, TO Arts presented 2 performances of Deluxe Puppets' production of Peter Pan to 763 elementary school students as part of our ongoing series of storybook stage productions. In addition, TO Arts presented 2 performances of Earth's Prehistoric Aquarium in November to 570 elementary students. Over the past several months, our Arts Education Committee has been working to develop the framework for an Adopt a School initiative for local Title I schools. Under this program, TO Arts would work closely with teachers and administrators to develop in-classroom activities and performances at the Bank of America Performing Arts Center that support the school's curriculum. TO Arts presented 32 performances featuring 24 artists and attractions between July 1st and December 31st. These performances attracted 23,448 patrons and grossed $1.37 million in ticket sales revenues. Despite the Kavli Theater being closed in August and September, this represents a 19.3% increase in attendance over the same period in 2018. Performers included Lyle Lovett, Paul Reiser, Peppa Pig Live, Don Felder, MasterChef Junior Live, and the Beach Boys. You'll find a complete list of the artists in attachment number 2 of our report. Some of our upcoming CAP Presents performances include Tony Bennett on January 30th, which is his first performance in Thousand Oaks since 1997, Travis Tritt on February 20th, and Chicago on March 3rd. We are pleased to present another season of the National Geographic Live Speaker Series featuring filmmakers, photographers, explorers, astronauts, and scientists directly off the pages of National Geographic magazine. The popularity of this series continues to grow year after year. We're also pleased to announce that Joel Price will serve as the moderator of this series this year. As a former LAPD homicide detective, we anticipate that he will not hesitate to ask our speakers the hard questions. Each of the National Geographic Live speakers will also make presentations to students at local middle and high schools. During fiscal year 1920, TO Arts will once again contribute $500,000 in funding to the Theater's Fund to help underwrite theater operations. The Dr. Raymond M. Olson Performance Grants program was established to provide local nonprofits with financial assistance to make usage of the theater facilities more accessible. Our board has approved the distribution of $150,000 in performance grant funding for the current fiscal year for the 3 resident companies and 6 local nonprofit arts organizations that present performances at the Kavli Theater and the Shear Forum. The city celebrated the 25th anniversary of the Civic Arts Plaza and Bank of America Performing Arts Center in early October, and TO Arts had held several events and activities in recognition of this special milestone. Rather than host a traditional gala, TO Arts created a special, multifaceted celebration called Curtain Up that took place on October 4th. The event featured a culinary retrospective with foods from the 1970s through present day, an intimate concert with Herb Alpert and Lanny Hall, a multimedia presentation on the 25-year history of the Bank of America Performing Arts Center projected onto the outside facade of the Kavli Theater, and dessert and dancing on the outdoor patio to close out the night. Over 300 people were in attendance, and the event raised $330,000 through sponsorships, ticket sales, a silent auction, and a raffle. TO Arts also presented 2 special anniversary concerts featuring Jackie Ivanko, backed by a string ensemble, on Sunday, October 6th, and Vanessa Williams on Friday, October 11th, in what was her first appearance in Thousand Oaks. TO Arts also unveiled 2 new attractions in the Kavli Theater lobby area in recognition of the 25th anniversary. A decorative autograph wall was installed in the founders level lobby and features ceramic tiles signed by many of the artists that have appeared in the Kavli Theater and Shear Forum. Autographs on display include Ringo Starr, Vice President Joe Biden, Beach Boys, Chris Isaak, Jay Leno, Vin Scully, Paul Anka, and Lily Tomlin. A large history wall was also unveiled in the orchestra level lobby, which tells the story of the first 25 years of the Bank of America Performing Arts Center through stories, photos, videos, and memorabilia. Special pages will soon be added to the TO Arts website that will contain additional photos and stories to complement the content on the history wall. The associated costs for the design, fabrication, and installation of the autograph wall and the history wall were underwritten by TO Arts, and the walls were provided to the city as gifts from TO Arts in honor of the 25th anniversary. TO Arts is continuing to work with a marketing consultant to finalize a new brand identity and communications plan for our organization. Staff is currently in the final stages of working with the consultant to develop a case statement, branded collateral materials, a new website, and social media presence, and to create the implementation plan for the introduction of the new TO Arts branding. A CAP Presents programming update brochure was distributed in September to 85,000 households. The brochure featured upcoming performances and information on all of the Civic Arts Plaza's 25th anniversary events. Our strategic work plan for the next 6 months incorporates 4 key areas with a focus on the future growth of TO Arts programs and activities. The first area is board development, with a focus of bringing more diversity to the board and to ensure continuity as current directors transition off the board in future years. Within the next few weeks, we will be asking City Council to ratify a change to our bylaws that will permit the appointment of up to 11 directors from the current limit of 7 directors. Our next focus will be on our grant programs, with a goal of increasing the impact of the current programs and on identifying ways to provide more meaningful support to the resident companies. Next in our work plan is arts education, with a focus on defining what arts education means in regards to our current Kids and the Arts program. Our Arts Education Committee will also develop a structure for the new Adopt a School initiative that I mentioned previously. We've already had several donors express an interest in providing financial support for the Adopt a School program. Our last work plan item, and probably most pressing, is to develop a transition plan in anticipation of our executive director's retirement in early March to minimize any disruption to board activities and TO Arts programs. This is an exciting time for TO Arts and other arts organizations in the community as the city moves forward with the downtown specific plan, which incorporates the Civic Arts Plaza Master Plan and the revision to the general plan, which all have cultural components. The TO Arts Board recognizes that these plans present an opportunity for tremendous growth for the local arts and cultural sector and for TO Arts to expand its programming to a broader segment of the community. On behalf of the TO Arts Board and staff and the millions of patrons whose lives have been enriched by attending performances at the Bank of America Performing Arts Center, I want to thank you for your continued support of our efforts and activities. As I complete our report, I want to acknowledge our Executive Director, Barry McComb, who is retiring in March. The success of the merger that became TO Arts and the incredible progress that we've made is due to Barry's tireless efforts. He drives us forward, keeps us organized, encourages our efforts, and generates exciting and new possibilities. It is our great pleasure to work with you, Barry. Thank you for your leadership and your vision for TO Arts. Barry and I are now available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Leanne. Excellent report. I'm very happy to see that the merger between the Alliance for the Arts and the Foundation has made the theater stronger and better, and obviously from your report, it's bearing some tremendous fruit. Just, on the history wall, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Eloise Cohen had a lot with that idea.
Yes, she sure did.
And Eloise, if you're out there, it was a great idea, really. People need to know how this all started, and that history wall tells that story. And also, you mentioned a 20% increase in attendance.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were dark in August and September, it shows that the community is still supporting the arts here.
That's right.
And a $500,000 raise by Nikki this year. And another unquestionable support of the arts here in the city of Thousand Oaks. And as the campus master plan comes into reality, it's going to do nothing but enhance these theaters. We'll have a public amphitheater, we'll have a town square, and we'll open up the theaters to the grounds below and the boulevard in front, and it's just going to be great for the long-term longevity of our theaters. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing, Leanne. And I
Thank
think
you.
going to 11 members sounds, like makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we think
Of course,
so.
I have to vote on that later, so. It's just
Thank
an
you.
opinion at this point. But anyway, thank you very much for that report.
Thank you.
And we have a speaker, Mayor Pro Tem.
No, I just wanted to thank you as well, as Barry, of course. Reports like this get me very excited because I see how you're addressing the need for arts education in our community. And I think that in itself is worth all of the pain, growing pains and everything that everybody goes through. But it's just really wonderful. So I'm really looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to move on to a department report. This is a pre-screen for a apartment complex over in the Rancho Conejo area. And I believe Don Nielsen is going to give us a report. Good evening, Don.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, council members, and members of the public. So the project before you tonight, it consists of 4 different requests. It's the Measure E unit allocation. The second and third is going to be the initiation for a general plan amendment and a specific plan amendment, and the fourth one is to allow concurrent processing. The proposed project is located on a vacant 1.6 acre site adjacent to the Rancho Conejo industrial area. As you can see, it's actually surrounded by existing residential and industrial development. Of particular note in this case is that the project site is directly below. It's an existing apartment complex to the north. Here you can actually see this is a couple of views of the project site. The existing apartment complex is in that top, the background of that top image. Please note that there is going to be an oak tree that we'll be referring to later in that top left image surrounded by the red box. The project plans, they currently indicate an encroachment into the protected zone and the drip line of that tree. However, staff has been working with the applicant to eliminate its encroachment and relocate the project access. And we'll get into that further detail later on. Now a little bit of background on the project. The application was actually submitted in August of last year, and since that time, staff and the applicant, we've actually been doing significant amount of discussions, trying to find solutions to different concerns, primarily the site access. Now, so what is this pre-screen process? It's an evaluation of a proposed concept against adopted city criteria, and it's a required step for the Measure E unit allocation. It should be known that the project, it may be modified between now and when it's actually during the formal application within the next 12 months, and that tonight's action is not approving the project. It's just allowing the conceptual project idea to move forward. Pardon me. Also, this action does not guarantee the project will be approved during that formal review process. With all of this in mind, let's dig into the project details just a little bit. The proposal is for 26 units, apartment units contained within 2 buildings with new green space and amenities for not only the potential future tenants, but also existing tenants. 11% of these units will be designated as affordable, but those levels have not been finalized yet. As part of the project, a general plan amendment will actually have to be processed in order to change the land use designation from industrial to neighborhood to high density residential. Additionally, because the project site is located within the Rancho Conejo specific plan, a specific plan amendment will have to be processed in order to change the zoning from employment park, which is equivalent of the M1 zone, it has all of the development standards of that, to residential apartments. That's a specific zone embedded within the specific plan. Now, in terms of the general plan amendment, the high density residential allows for the 1.6 acre site to be developed at 30 units per acre. However, the current proposal is only proposing at 16.25 units per acre, so it is about half of it. At this time, there is no request for a density bonus for the project. Given the size of the project site and the allowed density, The project is requesting its 48 residential units from the Measure E Bank, and that accounts for approximately 4% of the total citywide capacity. Now, let's go ahead and move on to the actual project evaluation on how it compares against the city adopted criteria. So the project site, it is suitable for residential uses for a number of different reasons. The proposed general plan land use designation of high density is consistent with the existing high density designation directly to the north. It is within walking and biking distance to multiple industrial, office, and commercial uses. And there are also nearby parks and open space. The project site is also adjacent to existing residential uses, as I was mentioning beforehand. Particularly, it's that residential apartment complex directly to the north. It's also adjacent to a major employment area of the city, and there is a Ventura County Transportation Commission bus stop less than 500 feet away. And they actually have lines that connect to all the major cities within Ventura County at that bus stop. The project concept, it is consistent with the existing apartments directly to the north, and it also is proposing a very generous setback to the east in order to pull the project away from the existing single-family residential units. The project will provide an ample landscaping and new interior green space amenities while also providing compatible architecture to the existing apartments. So effectively, they're just taking the existing architecture and modeling the proposed project off of that. And here you can actually see this is a rendering of the project looking northeast, and here's a rendering looking southeast. In terms of impacts to any protected trees, there are no protected oak or landmark trees on the property. This is where I was getting back to where I was mentioning before, that one oak tree on the adjacent property. And that is currently proposed to have the vehicle access encroach into the protected zone and the drip line of that tree. However, as I mentioned again before, the applicant and staff have been working together to relocate the project access point in order to avoid this impact, while also simultaneously addressing both fire and public works access concerns. In terms of the community benefits, the project will add needed housing in both market rate and affordable units to the city. Additionally, future residents of the potential project would have access to all the existing amenities of the apartment complex to the north, including but not limited to a gym, playground, play areas, and a pool and spa area. Given that tonight's action will not result in a direct or indirect physical change to the environment, it is not considered a project and therefore not subject to the California Environmental Quality Act. Please note that the project will be reviewed for conformance against CEQA during the formal application process. The proposed project also meets the City Council Goal I, as it will help the production of long-term housing, long-term affordable housing, and it also meets City Council priority number 9, as it will provide affordable units that meets the city's RHNA numbers. If the City Council approves the project, the request tonight, the applicant then has to revise their projects and submit for a pre-application to the Community Development Department. After that process, the applicant then has to submit the formal application to the city within 12 months. So by January 28th, 2021, the city has to receive the formal application in order for them to hold on to those particular units. Any formal application that is then submitted will then have to be reviewed and approved by both the Planning Commission and ultimately the City Council. Therefore, staff recommends the City Council provide direction to either 1, adopt a resolution to initiate a general plan and specific plan amendment, allocate 48 dwelling units, and allow concurrent processing, or 2, deny the application request. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. Not seeing any questions from the council. We're going to now go to the applicant, who is represented by Doug Griffith. Mr. Griffith, step down to the podium. And you have 15 minutes if you choose to use all 15.
I'm Doug Griffith from Santa Monica, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have about the project. Been working with staff on it. So any questions you might have, I'm happy to answer.
And we do have a question. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor Adam. Good evening, Mr. Griffith. I was wondering about a couple of things. The affordability, 3 units of affordable, and it's mentioned as affordable. We don't know whether they're going to be very low income or low income. Do you have any idea?
Well, the concept behind the project is really to mirror the existing apartments which Chappelle has built and owned for the past 25 years adjacent to it. There we have 11% of the units as affordable, which we've been operating since we built them. Those units are at a moderate level of income, and it's something that we've talked to staff about what we would be able to do on this. I think it kind of depends what the project ends up becoming as we go through the process. But we're open to working with staff on that. We're not asking for any density bonuses, and so we think that 11% is reasonable given what we have done in the past, that precedent from the neighboring apartment community that we do own and built.
Thank you for your answer. I was just wondering whether there would be any appetite in increasing that number, that there is a bigger public benefit to rezoning this to high-density residential.
It would be challenging for us to give more because of the fact that it's such a small project. With it only being 1.6 acres and it's a very small number of units to build, it would be very challenging for us to give more than the 11%. When you have bigger projects, you have more economies of scale, and it's possible to give more units. So I think it would be very challenging for us to do more than the 11%.
Well, we are allocating 48 units to this tonight. Obviously, you don't have to, I mean, we're not going to do it. I don't know how the council is going to vote, but that's the proposal before us. So I would really ask that, should this be approved, that you work with staff to increase that number, because there has to be a better public benefit to this, as well as the architecture. Right now, it looks a little bland to me, but I would direct you and staff to improve on that. But the importance of adding more affordable units for our substitute teachers, firefighters, deputies, we keep saying that over and over again. They can live next door to scientists. That's not a problem. So if I would really encourage you to look at increasing that number, because you have the opportunity here to use more than 26 units. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and actually, that's a good point. And as we work with staff on the project, if the project were to get larger within the allocation, we would be able to increase the number of affordable units. So.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Engler.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a little question. As I looked at the renderings that you gave us, it did look a little boxy to me, but having gone out there, I noticed that the other units, it seems to mirror the other units as they are in place. Are you looking at any major grading to go over there, as it could be a fairly flat lot as it is?
So the new lot is a couple of feet higher than the adjacent lot. So there would probably be a little bit of grading just to get it so that both pedestrian and potentially vehicle paths would work, but very minor. The lot itself is level, so we don't anticipate major grading to go on. As far as the architecture, again, the concept behind the whole project was to mirror the existing apartments. So we're happy to work with staff on the architecture as staff in the city would like. That was just the concept, was to make it blend and feel like one community.
In terms of the oak tree that's going to have a little bit of impact, is there any, I know you've been talking to staff about moving the access to that property. Is that going to be a problem for you so that we don't have to impact the oak tree?
Yeah, no, I think that's the goal. I think that's one of the things we're definitely actively working on with staff, is moving the entrance. We think that it can work. There's two different ways that we're looking at enabling that so that it doesn't impact the oak tree. So that's definitely the goal.
And to echo Councilmember Claudia Building Pena, I would love to see a little bit more in terms of affordable housing there. But I do recognize that you're trying to mirror the existing layout of the other units. So anything you could do in that area would be appreciated.
All right. And this is the beauty of the pre-screen process, which we adopted just a few years ago. So rather than going right into an application process, which can be expensive and lengthy, you can appear before the council. We can give you some input and give you an idea whether the project has enough merit to move on. And you've heard tonight some concerns about the architecture. You've heard tonight some concerns about the number of units, affordable units. And my comment to you would be, as far as the affordable units, we are lacking in two categories, very low and low income in our RENA numbers. And so that I would like you to work with staff and see if there's a possibility of making those units, those two designations. All right?
Yep.
All right. And let us now go to staff for any responses or thoughts, comments? We're good? Okay. And you have 5 minutes for rebuttal, which I doubt very much if you're going to use.
No,
because there's nothing to rebut.
Thank you for looking at the project. We
All
appreciate
right,
it.
very good. All right, well, thank you for appearing,
Thank you.
Mr. Griffith. And we're going to move on now to council discussion and/or motion, and Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I would move approval of staff recommendation with the direction to, number one, that would be right, number one, and with the direction to see if perhaps the architecture could be improved a little bit, but keeping in mind it's to blend in with the rest, but primarily to look at increasing the number of units for low income and very low income.
All right. Motion on the floor?
So just to clarify, staff recommendation is to initiate the general plan amendment and, okay,
All right, very good.
Adopt the resolution.
and adopt the resolution.
Let's vote.
The motion carries 5-0.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Griffith. Look forward to working with you. And onward to another department report. And this is a urgency ordinance in response to the state law change that has to do with accessory dwelling units. And we have Michael Forbes that is going to give us that report. Good evening, Mr. Forbes.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Bring this up here. Excuse me while I find the presentation. All right. Good evening. There are two items connected to this agenda item tonight, two actions that we are asking the City Council to take related to accessory dwelling units. The first is to adopt an urgency ordinance regulating accessory dwelling units, which would become effective immediately upon adoption by the Council. The second is to adopt a resolution that would initiate the normal amendment process to the Thousand Oaks Municipal Code, again concerning ADUs. Just very quickly to discuss what an ADU is and make sure everyone is on the same page. An ADU is a dwelling unit that is separate from the main dwelling unit on the property. It has a separate kitchen and typically has a separate bathroom. There are three different types of ADUs that are discussed under the state law: junior ADUs, attached, and detached ADUs. A junior ADU results from the conversion of an existing living area and is located entirely within the main house. It must have what's referred to in the state law as an efficiency kitchen, which is basically a kitchen that may or may not have a sink, which is separate from the main house's kitchen. It may or may not have a separate bathroom. There is an option in state law to share the bathroom with the main house. An attached ADU is, just like it sounds, attached to the main house. It results from either new construction or conversion of an existing living area, including the conversion of an attached garage attached to the main house. And these have a separate full kitchen and a separate bathroom from the main house. Finally, a detached ADU, which is not attached to the main house. It could be either a freestanding structure or it could be attached to another accessory building on the property, including a garage. These can be either new construction or they can result from the conversion of an existing accessory building. And again, these have a separate full kitchen and separate full bathroom from the main house. Some quick background. The state of California has, over the past couple of decades, progressively restricted cities' ability to regulate ADUs. Most recently, there was legislation that was effective on January 1st, 2017 that reduced parking requirements and it made it easier to convert existing structures. Since that time, Thousand Oaks and other cities throughout the state have seen a major increase from the public in building ADUs and have seen surges in applications. Since 2017, when that legislation took effect, Thousand Oaks has seen 53 ADU applications and 22 of those have been constructed so far. So additional new legislation now, which is why we're before you this evening, 5 bills that became effective on January 1st of this year. As you might imagine, with 5 bills taking effect and dealing with the same sections of code at the same time, they are very complicated. Different bills have inconsistencies and conflicts between themselves, and there are a number of ambiguities that are yet to be cleared up at the state level, where cities are still waiting for guidance from the State Department of Housing and Community Development on how some of these are yet to be implemented. So part of the reason that we're taking this two-step process of the urgency ordinance and then the regular ordinance is because we'd like to get something on the books immediately for reasons I'll go into in a minute, but coming back with the regular ordinance gives us time to wait for the state to clear up some of those ambiguities and make sure that we have an ordinance that's consistent with state law. The reason for the urgency ordinance, the third bullet point here, is that the legislation that was adopted explicitly voids any city ordinances that are inconsistent with the state law as of January 1st, 2020, and defaults only to state regulations for ADUs. Some of the most notable changes that took effect on January 1st, and I'll go deeper into a couple of these in a minute, but the high points of the new legislation: it allows for larger size ADUs, it further reduces parking requirements for ADUs beyond what they already were, it allows for reduced impact fees and in some cases no impact fees to be required for ADUs, it establishes a shorter time frame for cities to act on ADU applications. It removes the owner occupancy requirement, meaning that you could rent out both your main house and your ADU. The owner is no longer required to live on the property. It now allows for ADUs in multifamily zones, whereas previously they were only allowed in single-family residential zones. It allows more than one ADU per lot, and it provides even more flexibility if you're looking to convert existing structures and convert existing garages. There's additional flexibility now to do that. So hitting a few of the highlights for maximum ADU size, and this is where it distinguishes between the 3 different types of ADUs. So for a junior ADU, you can go up to 500 square feet. An attached ADU to the main house can be up to 50% of the main dwelling, but the state law has another provision that says we can't limit it to less than 800 square feet. So even if the house is under 1,600 square feet, meaning the 50% would be less than 800, it still defaults back up to the 800. And then the detached ADUs can be the largest of the 3. We have to allow up to 850 square feet for a studio or a 1-bedroom unit, and up to 1,000 square feet for a unit with 2 or more bedrooms. Another distinction is that there's no longer the ability to limit the number of bedrooms, whereas before we could limit it to either 1 or 2 bedrooms depending on the type. We now only can limit the square footage. The parking requirements have been further relaxed. There is no ADU parking required if you convert a garage. And then in addition to that, they've taken the next step and said not only do you not have to provide parking for the ADU, you don't have to replace the existing parking that you're losing. So the 2 places in the garage do not have to be replaced for the main house. In addition, there's no parking required if you have a junior ADU, if you have any ADU that is a studio unit, If you have an ADU that is either an existing or even a rebuilt accessory structure that's being converted, and then there's a list of additional specific circumstances where no parking is required, the most notable for us being that if you're within a half mile of a bus stop, you do not have to provide parking for the ADU. So really the last bullet there, the only case where parking is required under the new state law is that we can require one space if it's a new construction ADU with one or more bedrooms, but that parking may be uncovered and it may be tandem in a driveway. So if you have an existing driveway, that can count as the parking space. For side and rear setbacks, currently we require a 5-foot setback. The state law has reduced that to 4 feet for the side and rear. There's another caveat that says if you're converting an existing structure, even if that has a setback of less than 4 feet, you can still convert it without providing that additional setback. It even goes so far as saying that you can demolish and rebuild an accessory structure as long as it's within the same footprint. You don't have to meet that 4-foot setback. And you can expand a structure by up to 150 square feet and still follow that existing setback, even if it's less than 4 feet. Other notable changes in the new legislation, there's now a 16-foot height limit for detached ADUs, which is 1 foot higher than the 15 feet that we previously required. Again, as I noted, the owner occupancy is no longer required, meaning you can rent both of the units on the property. With regard to impact fees, if the ADU is less than 750 square feet, we are now prohibited from charging any impact fees on that unit. And we are already seeing some applications coming in at 749 square feet so that people can take advantage of that. If you're larger than 750 square feet, we are allowed to charge impact fees, but it has to be in a rate proportional to the main dwelling. Another one of the cases where there's a little ambiguity there, and we're still trying to figure out exactly what proportional means and how that will be calculated. The maximum time for the city to act on an application has been reduced to 60 days, and as under the old legislation, that must be a ministerial approval, meaning we cannot exercise any discretion, we cannot send out a public notice. As long as it meets the requirements, we're required to approve it. As I mentioned, there is now an increase, whereas previously you could only have one ADU on a property in a single-family zone. You can now have 2 ADUs per lot, one of those being a junior ADU. In multifamily zones, there are multiple ADUs that are allowed depending on how many multifamily units are on the property. And finally, we have been getting questions about this also. There is a provision in the legislation now saying that any HOA or covenant restrictions that prohibit ADUs are now considered null and void. So HOAs no longer have the ability to enforce that. So getting back to the urgency ordinance and the reason that we're asking council to take this action this evening, as I noted, under the law, our current city ordinance is considered void as of January 1st because it does not fully comply with the new state law. So any applications that come in today would be subject only to the minimum standards established under the state law. That is a concern to us because the standards are so minimum that we feel that that would be a threat to neighborhood character, property values, poses safety concerns because of the minimalist nature of the state standards. So we're asking the council to address that by taking action this evening with the urgency ordinance. It does require a 4/5 vote of the council, but unlike a regular ordinance, it would become effective immediately upon adoption by the council. The next step in the process then that we're asking the council would be to adopt a resolution to initiate a municipal code amendment to go through the regular process, which would include a planning commission public hearing and then coming back to the council for a public hearing at a later time. That gives us the opportunity to address, as I mentioned, some of the conflicts and inconsistencies that are in the current state law. We're hoping that those will be worked out by the state within the next couple of months and that we can bring back an ordinance that we're comfortable reflects the intent of the state law. In your supplemental packet this evening, you received a letter from a housing advocacy organization that raised some concerns with the ordinance. Another advantage to doing the two-part approach is that we can go back and look at the concerns that they raised, and to the extent there are any concerns that we believe need to be addressed in the ordinance, we can do that as part of the regular ordinance. Staff in the city attorney's office have reviewed the comment letter. There are some issues there that we will be looking into further, but we don't feel that there's anything in there that rises to the level that we need to make any changes to the urgency ordinance that's before the council this evening. So our recommendation would be that you proceed with the ordinance as recommended by staff, and then we will look into those issues further and address that as part of the regular ordinance. So again, just in summary, the two actions tonight, introducing, reading, and adopting the ordinance by a 4/5 vote, and then further adopting the resolution to initiate the normal process. I'm available for any questions from the council.
All right, thank you, Mr. Forms. We have a question from Councilmember Jones.
Yeah. The approval, therefore, being ministerial, let me just preface this by saying I'm in favor of doing things that will produce more affordable housing, and so this is in that vein. And I, appreciate what they're doing, because I have had some experience with this also at other when I was with the county. But on the other hand, the fact that this is a ministerial approval, does that mean if something were contemplated on a property that might seem not a good idea to a neighbor, what would be that person's recourse? Would that person go to the ministerial hearing? Is that it?
Because it's ministerial and the way that the state law is set up, there would not be a hearing. It's required to be approved basically over the counter is a good way to think of it. If a neighbor had concerns that what was being built didn't comply with the code, they could certainly bring that to our attention, and we could check and make sure that it's being built and consistent with what was approved. But so long as it complies with the zoning standards and with the state law and with building code requirements, we would be compelled to approve it.
So there would be no appeal. Could be no appeal.
Correct.
It's kind of similar to just building permits for additions to houses. It's very similar to that. It's basically considered the same thing.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Have we, now that we have had 22 units, ADUs built in the city of Thousand Oaks, have we heard any complaints about traffic, about noise, or homes being rented out by the landlord who lives somewhere else?
I'm not aware. I'm going to look at Mr. Parker and see if he is aware of any.
That is correct, Mr. Forbes. To date, in the 22 ADUs that have been built since 2017, there have been no complaints related to traffic and our absentee landlords specifically.
Okay, and I know the goal is to provide affordable housing, but the rents are set by the owner at whatever rate they want them to be. So I'm not sure if this is truly going to help solve the affordable housing crisis in California. I see it more of an overreach and usurping local control. So what is the next step? This will be in effect if we vote for it tonight for 45 days, and then we come back to see if it needs to be extended, or what's the next step?
This is a little bit different from the urgency ordinances that the council has done recently, the moratorium, for example. This urgency ordinance becomes effective immediately, and then there is no sunset provision. It's in effect, and it remains in effect. The purpose for us coming back with the second ordinance is to just take it through the normal process, allow the opportunity for public input, and then, as I mentioned, hopefully cleaning up some of the inconsistencies and ambiguities that are in the state law now. But we would come back to council. We don't have a firm schedule yet, but it'll be probably a couple months. It would go back to Planning Commission and then come back to council. But there is no sunset provision where the council would have to decide whether or not to extend it.
In addition, the every city's ADU ordinance has to be presented to the state HCD for approval. So by going down this other track of a regular ordinance, it gives us an opportunity to submit the urgency ordinance, get feedback and comments from HCD, and if we need to make any changes, we can do that through the normal process.
Thank you.
Councilmember Engler.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Mr. Forbes, in terms of the state has pretty much told us we need to do these things. What types of benefit are we to derive from coming up with our ordinance now, our urgency ordinance, that brings our current ordinance up to date? Are we retaining any ability to direct some of these ADUs, or what are we retaining?
Yes, by doing the urgency ordinance, the state law does give us the opportunity to put in very few, but some additional development controls beyond the minimums that are in the state law. So for example, the state law does not have an absolute maximum size for ADUs. It gives the cities the ability to set a maximum size, but absent that, it doesn't itself prescribe a maximum size. So by not having the urgency ordinance in place, arguably somebody could come in and propose something as large as they wanted to. There's a couple of other things such as front setback requirements, lot coverage limitations, things like that we believe we are allowed to put in place that are in addition to what the state law allows. So rather than just defaulting to the minimums of the state, this gives us the opportunity to put a few additional controls in place.
Do our viewscape ideas and also our oak tree protections, are they also something that it would be protected if we do this ordinance tonight?
Yes, we believe that those other provisions by adopting this would still be in effect. There's a clause in the ordinance before you this evening that basically says any and all zoning controls that normally would apply still apply, except for these following cases where we're superseded by state law. So we believe that the oak tree ordinance and other things like that would still be applicable by putting this ordinance in place.
So our 25% slope ordinance would also be retained, or is that something that would go away with the state mandates?
We believe we can still keep it in place. That's something that we're going to look at as we develop the regular ordinance and bring that forward to make sure that other provisions like that can still be protected and still be done in a manner that's consistent with state law.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that question, Councilmember Engler. It's exactly what was on my mind. The urgency ordinance looks like it's the only avenue that we have to maintain some sort of local control over this, whether it comes to our trees, our slopes, our setbacks. The state obviously wants to incentivize building ADUs, but there's a balance there because we have some local concerns that we want to exert, and this urgency ordinance will help us do that to preserve our neighborhood character, our property values, you name it, privacy, safety. So I think it's the only way to go in the face of the state of California. All right, Councilmember McCoy.
It appears that they've basically just done away with single-family zoning. Would that be a fair assessment at the state level?
They certainly are increasing opportunities for people to put more units into single-family neighborhoods. I will say that.
Diplomatic way of approaching that. And in relation to affordable housing, it's certainly going to affect supply and demand. I mean, it is a market-driven aspect, but it's going to ruin what we've come to appreciate about Thousand Oaks. It's quite an overreach of the state.
Thank you, Councilmember. All right. I don't see any speakers, so we're going to go to a vote motion. Do I see anyone that would like to make that?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move approval of the recommended action, but I'd like to echo what I've heard so far, and that is this is really taking away a lot of local control, which I don't like. And the point that Councilman McCoy just raised is really an interesting one. I don't know if we'll have to change the title of single-family zoning or not, but it does point up the fact that we really can be overridden by the state, even though we have the best of our residents at heart. But I do, on the other hand, appreciate the idea of having more affordable housing because of the terrible disparity in this city of cost of housing with wages, as Councilwoman De La Pena said, of teachers and you know, fire, local professional type occupation that we would want to encourage to live here. So I'm moving approval.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Jones. Motion on the floor. If we vote, please.
The motion carries 5-0, and I do have an ordinance title, an urgency ordinance amending sections 9-4.202, 9-4.1802C, 9-4.1803, 9-4.21104, 9-4.2501A3, 9-4.240287, 9-4.2509A, 9-4.2509.5, and 9-4.2521, and deleting in its entirety section 9-4.2521.1 of Chapter 4 of Title 9 of the Thousand Oaks Municipal Code regarding regulations for accessory dwelling units, MCA 2019-70990, and ordinance number is 1678 NS.
All right, thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. And now we're going to move on to our final department report on our franchise waste agreements, and Dr. Cox will be our reporter on that one. Good evening, Dr. Cox.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'm here this evening to provide an update on the exclusive franchise agreement for solid waste, and I'm joined on the dais by Cliff Finley, the Deputy Director of Public Works, and our consultant, Richard Tagore-Irwin, the President and CEO of R3 Consulting Group. Council set the development of a sustainability strategic plan as one of its top 10 priorities for this fiscal year. The plan was reviewed by Council in September and includes waste as a key component. The city's solid waste franchise agreement largely controls how our waste is handled. The current agreement expires at the end of 2021. This provides the city an opportunity to rethink our waste and recycling operations and to structure our new agreement to align with the new state mandates. Long-term agreements were first entered into in 1994 with residential service provided by 3 companies and commercial by 2. With consolidation, today the city is served by 2 haulers, Waste Management, or GI Industries, and E.J. Harrison, also known as Newbury Disposal. These companies serve specific geographic areas within the city with residential service, as shown on the map. Waste Management provides commercial service throughout the whole city. This evening, Council is being asked to choose between one of 2 options: to either renew the franchise with the current 2 haulers, serving the same areas as now under a revised agreement, or to go out with a request for proposals, or RFP, for a new solid waste franchise for the city, which would go into effect January the 1st, 2022. On December the 10th, this same question was brought to Council. Understanding the importance of their decision, Council decided to postpone this until tonight to allow further time for consideration. I'll now present an overview of our existing rates and then consider the terms of a new agreement and the RFP process. Residential service is bundled with 3 carts, one for trash, one for recycling, and one for yard waste. The current contract allows for rate increases annually following the Consumer Price Index, but contract negotiations in 2013 resulted in concessions that limited rate increases between 2013 and 2015. Since 2017, external factors have driven rates up, in particular, the collapse of the overseas market for recyclables and new state regulations affecting the recycling of green waste. In Thousand Oaks, the current basic residential service costs $35.78 per month. A comparison with other local jurisdictions suggests that this is in the mid to high range, but it is critical to note that many factors play into these rates. Availability and distance to facilities, effective date of the rates and of the contract, franchise and other fees, and included services such as street sweeping and city services. Comparison of commercial service rates across jurisdictions is even more challenging because, as well as the complicating factors just mentioned, commercial service comes in many combinations of bin size and frequency. 4 different bin sizes are available, and collections can occur at frequencies from once to 6 times a week. 78% of accounts in the city utilize a 3 cubic yard bin, and collection frequencies of 1 to 3 times a week are the most common. This chart shows a comparison of 3 cubic yard monthly trash rate service rates for once a week service. Costs in the city are in the mid-range for the county. Rates across LA County are very variable. Rates for commercial recycling in the city are tied to trash rates. These rates are significantly discounted to encourage recycling, and in the past, these discounts have been offset by recycling revenue. In today's market, however, recycling costs as much, if not more, than trash disposal. An adjustment from 30% to 31.5% of the trash rate was made 18 months ago. However, our haulers are seeking additional recycling rate increases. It's evident that our rates are low in comparison to other jurisdictions. Some significant changes are anticipated in a new contract due to new state regulations under SB 1383 that require organic waste recycling for all residents and businesses and increased outreach, compliance monitoring, and enforcement. Organic waste refers to landscaping waste and food waste. Currently, our bundled residential service includes landscaping, but not food waste, and scheduled commercial service does not include landscaping waste, but does include food waste service for larger generators such as restaurants, supermarkets, and hotels. With the assistance of our consultant, R3 Consulting Group, negotiations with the city haulers have resulted in an MOU which establishes the key terms and 5-year rates for a new agreement, which it would include expanded organic service, compliance with other new regulations, and expanded services for residents, as noted here. Future rate increases in the MOU are primarily based on CPI. The rate proposals that follow illustrate increases based on a 3% CPI. Residential rates have already been established for 2020. There will be some adjustments in 2021 and 2022, but no CPI increase until 2023. This would result in a cumulative 13% increase in residential bundled rates between now and 2025. The MOU proposes trash rate increases below CPI over the next 5 years, but recycling rate increases averaging around 20% a year. The combined effect of increases in commercial trash, recycling, and organics rates will impact businesses differently depending on their waste volume and service frequency. The example shown here illustrates the effect on one of the most common service levels, a 3-yard trash bin, a 3-yard recycling bin, and a 64-gallon organics cart serviced once a week. This would experience a 26% rate increase over the next 5 years. Those with the same trash and recycling service but not yet subscribed to organic service will experience a combined 54% rate increase over the next 5 years, as organic service must be added in addition to the trash and recycling rate increases. At this point, I'm going to hand over the presentation to our consultant, Richard Tagore-Irwin from R3 Consulting, and he'll explain a little about the RFP process should council decide to take that route.
Thank you. And again, Richard Tagore with R3 Consulting. Just going to kind of give you an overview of typical RFP process. You issue documents as you do any contract or RFP the city issues. You follow that same process. Where it may diverge from your other types of contracts you let out is how you evaluate and make the selections. What we would suggest you do is you start with a pass-fail process, where you have anybody that has any haulers that have criminal activity or have been terminated for cause from a franchise agreement. They do not have franchise residential customers. They do not have franchise commercial customers, or they do not have access to processing capacity, which you need, or access to capital. You're going to disqualify from day one. They're just not qualified. You don't want them even to submit. You set up the process that way. Once you get into the evaluation, that's the technical evaluation where you look at their services, their proposed services, their customer service activities, their facilities that they're going to be using for processing your organics and your recyclables, and really focus in on safety and how they're going to provide the services going forward. After that is done, you also look at the customer rates on a comparative basis to see where they stack up against each other as well as the surrounding community, both the residential customers and the commercial customers. From there, you score the proposals predicated on pre-established criteria, compile the scores, and rank them, and then that would be presented back to the council with comparisons in the scoring results and a recommendation. In terms of typical RFP scoring, this was pulled from the City of LA's recent RFP. Qualifications, are they qualified? What is their management history? Who is going to staff this? Where are they located? What is their litigation history? What's their workplace safety? What is their operational safety records? What's their insurance modification factors? You look at those types of things. Those are qualifications. We would anticipate if you go to an RFP process, the vendors that would submit here are going to be qualified. You're going to have some good qualified vendors. Second would be customer service and transition. Where are they providing customer service? How are they answering phones? What is their process they're doing? Have they transitioned services, and where have they done so? Very, very important if you do make a change that they have a track record of providing transition and they've documented in their proposal so you're very comfortable with it. Their service plan is very important. That's really sort of the meat of it. Their collection operations, their maintenance facilities, how they're going to maintain the vehicles to make sure they're safe on your streets, how they're going to route, how many hours per day that they operate, the facilities they're going to use, where they're going to process materials, where they're going to landfill materials. And then another big one is diversion and innovation, because you have a lot of regulatory requirements the city is obligated to meet in terms of landfill diversion, making sure that their submittals of their plans actually is going to make sure that the city stays in compliance with state regulations. And last is cost. And that's basically customer rates. Those are typical factors that you evaluate and score on. Okay. This one. So if the council has several options to continue to renew the current agreements and continue the negotiations with the two vendors, which if that is the case, then those new agreements would go into effect January of 2021. If you go through an RFP process, then you'd have to issue a notice of non-extension to the haulers. Those agreements would terminate in December 31st, 2021. You would start an RFQ process to basically get additional staffing help to help you through this process. You would issue an RFP for the haulers in summer of 2020, and recommendations would be projected back to the council for early 2021. And that period between early 2021 and when the services start in January of the next year, that's the transition period, which is really critical for the new selected haulers to order equipment and get it delivered, do all the transitionary activities beforehand.
Thank you. That concludes our presentation, and we're available here for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Cox. Questions from council? All right. Hearing none, I am going to move on to our speakers, of which we have 7. And I'd like to ask you to state your name and city of residence. And let's call up Steve Lee first. And Steve will be followed by Sandra Pursley. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Steve Lee, resident of Newberry Park.
Thank you, Steve.
Honorable Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Steve Lee. I come before you tonight not only as Waste Management's District Operations Manager, but as a 23-year resident of Newberry Park/Thousand Oaks, to ask you to keep Waste Management and E.J. Harrison as your recycling and refuse collection providers. Some of you may have heard that our leader, Mike Smith, has taken ill and unable to make it to the meeting this evening. I am sure he is listening right now. Unfortunately, he has built a great operation and that can handle anything that comes our way. So Mike, if you can hear me, we got your back. Get well. As the district operations manager, I lead a team of dedicated women and men who set out each day with one goal: to serve the homes and the businesses of Thousand Oaks as professionally and completely as humanly possible. For decades, we have met that goal. Council member Claudia Bill de la Pena mentioned last council meeting that she had not had a single complaint for 17 years on council. And the whole team felt really proud of the city's own customer satisfaction survey where we were ranked as one of the city's top services. I also noticed that the staff report shows that the rates in Thousand Oaks are about the middle of those cities surveyed. Not too high, not too low. Most of the time you get what you pay for. In the city of Thousand Oaks, when it comes to recycling and refuse collection service, we get more than what we pay for. We get best-in-class service for middle-of-the-road rates, and I wish we could all get that deal everywhere. We have heard the saying before, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. I think whoever came up with that saying must have had a situation like this in mind. Why roll the dice when on a process just because it hasn't been done before? Now, I want to say a few words about the team, who is also your team. No matter what challenges come our way, ever-changing laws, regulations, rain, heat, cold, earthquakes, wildfires, whatever it may be, we are on the job, never taking our eyes off our promise to serve our customers. That's why we are ranked in top city services. With more than 40 WM women and men servicing Thousand Oaks, behind me you will see some of the team. They are here because your decision tonight is one of the most important things in our lives. We are a humble, dedicated, diverse group of people. More than anything, we want to keep working for Thousand Oaks. On behalf of the whole team, as a resident and dedicated service provider for the city of Thousand Oaks, I ask that tonight you vote to allow Waste Management and E.J. Harrison to continue to be a part of the city of Thousand Oaks.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Sandra Persley, followed by Fred Fukunaga. Evening, Sandra.
Good evening. I'm Sandra Persley. I'm here on behalf of Waste Management. I'm going to do my best to fill Mike Smith's incredibly big shoes, although mine are cuter. First, I want to acknowledge staff and R3 and the excellent job they did with the staff report capturing what we're facing in our industry now. It's clear they've invested a lot of care and effort in the decision tonight, and I know it wasn't an easy task. There's a lot going on. An RFP is supposed to be a way to get a contract that brings the highest value to customers at a fair rate with the least amount of disruption for everyone. Earlier, we looked at a sample evaluation criteria, and Thousand Oaks looks to me like they already have everything that they would get with an RFP process. The staff report clearly and correctly recognizes the following. Fact number 1, the existing haulers provide great service. Page 2 says the city's exclusive franchise solid waste haulers have served residents and businesses well for many years. We appreciate this comment, confirming once again that E.J. Harrison and Waste Management provide best-in-class service. Staff report fact number 2, if you live or own a business in California, your cost of service is going up due to changes in law, no matter which company is providing your service. Staff report fact number 3, the negotiated new contracts with the current haulers provide rate certainty and the opportunity to control the impact of increases needed to meet state mandates. Both haulers had ratepayers in mind when they agreed to freeze certain elements of the rates. applying the increases needed in small doses over a period of 5 years. I can tell you this is not what we're seeing outside the area. Several recent RFPs that would reflect the environment that we're in now with the recycling crisis and regulations have shown significant increases to rates, as much as 50 to 60%. You can see the details in a supplemental package we delivered yesterday. Staff report fact number 4, new contracts tend to have higher costs than older ones. Going to an RFP at this point actually poses a risk to the very excellent value that has already been established in negotiations with city staff and help with R3, an objective third-party consultant. The rate risks are obvious. You go to an RFP to test the market, rates can be higher or lower. Recent RFPs with nearby cities have tested the market, and the increases in Thousand Oaks that we're proposing are lower than those that they found. It's not clear what benefit an RFP process could bring in this situation beyond rolling the dice. There's a known saying that sometimes you don't know what you've got until it's gone. This team of haulers, along with city staff and the city's consultant, have presented you with an incredibly value and predictable proposal backed by a proven team committed to Thousand Oaks. All things that are guaranteed to continue if the council selects WM and E.J. Harrison tonight.
Thank you, Sandra. Fred Fukunaga, followed by Bill Barrett. Evening.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and City Council members and city staff. Fred Fukunaga, 24-year homeowner in Thousand Oaks and a waste management customer. I came here specifically tonight to thank you for taking the time to delay your vote from that December City Council meeting that I attended, in which you, after reflection, decided to delay your vote until today. I remember that meeting specifically where Councilmember McCoy lauded the service of both companies, and I, as a waste management customer, I totally agree. I mean, they've been excellent for all the time that I've lived here. In fact, I've developed a personal relationship with all 3 of my drivers. They're excellent. And whenever I've called Waste Management, they offer excellent customer service. So bottom line, I agree as a homeowner, as a consumer, with their quality. And so I agree there. However, I specifically remember Councilmember Bill De La Pena saying that inasmuch as this is a $20 million, and I'm looking at the my edition of the Acorn, Thousand Oaks Acorn, that this is a $20 million annual contract per year. Is that right? I don't know if that's a total contract over 5 years as opposed to $20 million per year. I think that's a big decision. And therefore, I'm, as an ordinary citizen, I really appreciated the time that you took to do your extra due diligence, because I appreciate the fact that Waste Management's doing a good job and they're in business to make a profit. I understand that, and they should get one that's reasonable. And by the same token, the city residents, and especially, I'm not a business owner, but if I were a business owner, I thought to myself in that meeting, if I'm looking at a 54% in that slide cumulative increase over the next 5 years, I'd be pretty concerned, and I'd think to myself, I hope the city council members are going to look at this really well and make an informed and thoughtful decision, which I know you have. So regardless of what you decide tonight, thank you. I mean, this is local government in action that's really representative of the finest. So thank you so much. Whatever you decide. And Waste Management, keep up the good job.
Thank you, Fred. Bill Barrett, followed by Mark Jacobson. Evening, Bill.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Bill Barrett, and I live with my family in the Ojai Valley. And I'd first like to compliment you on your choice of Chief of Police. I see him up there. Did a great job in Ojai, and our loss is your gain. I am the president and majority owner of Benco Power Sweeping. Our company is a subcontracted street and parking lot provider for E.J. Harrison and Waste Management in New York City and several other areas for these two outstanding companies. We sweep approximately 36,000 curb miles in your city every year and remove approximately 2,200 tons of debris from your streets annually. I'm here tonight to make 3 points as to why you should approve the MOU negotiated with Waste Management and E.J. Harrison and direct staff to continue negotiations with these two exceptional companies. My first point is to continue negotiations and have city staff come back with a final agreement is clearly the most cost-effective and responsible decision. You've already agreed to spend close to $70,000 to assist with the current negotiations, and going out for an RFP could cost taxpayers another $200,000 in consulting fees. Why spend $250,000 and tie up staff for an extra year just to see if you can get a better deal? My experience is that going out for an RFP will cost you much more and will bring uncertainty about future service. I've had a very recent experience with another local city. My second point is a saying that has been around since the Stone Age. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Thomas Bertram Lance, a former director of the Office of Management and Budget, is widely attributed with this saying when he tried to save Uncle Sam billions of dollars by explaining, that's the trouble with government, fixing things that aren't broken and not fixing things that are broken. You have not one, but two extremely reliable, competent, and invested companies working together to provide superior service to your city. And both companies give back to the community more than many realize. And my third and final point was stated very well in attachment number 4 of the staff report. An RFP process would be unfair to both Waste Management and E.J. Harrison. Why pit them against each other and maybe one other outside company who would have a clear advantage knowing their proposed rates? It makes no sense to me. You won't save money. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And going out for an RFP, I think, would do more harm than good. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Mark Jacobson, followed by Nan Drake.
Good evening. My name is Mark Jacobson. I'm the Facilities Director at Cal Lutheran University. I'm here speaking in support of Waste Management and the continuance of the contract. I've been at Cal Lutheran for over 12 years now. That whole 12 years I've dealt closely with Steve Lee and Waste Management. Their customer service is excellent. One of my biggest irritations is getting texts from Steve at 8 o'clock at night telling me he's got our roll-offs arranged for delivery tomorrow or whatever it is. I'm obviously joking. Well, not about the texts. But I'm not irritated. But that's the kind of service that I've come to expect from Waste Management, and Cal Lutheran has as well. Waste Management has also been a big support in terms of helping to educate some of our students. They've come to campus, done trash audits for students that were interested in determining how much trash was in the waste stream, how much recyclables was in the waste stream. Again, it's about service. I think, again, the continuance would be a very good idea, in my opinion. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mark. Nan Drake, followed by... That's fine. Bill, I had you last, so come on up.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Bill Camarillo. I'm the CEO of Agrimen, and pleasure to speak to you tonight. I think everybody's done a great job of speaking about the great service that has been provided to the city, so I won't talk about the service part of it, but Agrimen has been the organics waste recycler for the city of Thousand Oaks for over 2 decades. and we're on the cusp of finally getting some permits in Ventura County to build state-of-the-art organics composting centers in our own county, less than 20 miles from the city of Thousand Oaks, where currently other compost centers that could potentially serve the city of Thousand Oaks are going to be 125 miles from here that are permitted. We started the permitting process 10 years ago, being anticipatory thinkers of the future and what was going to be required in the state of California. We love this great state, especially the city of Thousand Oaks, beautiful weather, beautiful communities, but California has decided for all of us that California can do better. So people need to understand why the trash rates are going up. It's not because of normal CPI and inflation, it's because of all the change in regulation, change in law of what we have to do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And you have a team that has collaborated for over 2 decades to keep the cost down and give you the best value. In choosing a waste provider or a service provider, you have to decide for your constituents whether you want a hamburger or a steak. And the city of Thousand Oaks deserves steaks. They always have. And I think Waste Management, the Harrisons, and the Agrimen have been innovative, progressive, staying ahead of the law, making sure that we've invested in our future collectively. We have combined all the city's waste streams to build these facilities. It's going to cost over $20 million to build the Limoneira Commercial Compost Center to serve Ventura County. No one city can afford it. So by collaborating, we've been able to keep the cost down on what it's going to take to meet the new mandate, SB 1383, which was adopted 2 weeks ago on Friday. It's real, it's here, it has penalties. We have till 2022 to meet the mandate. So I just hope that you understand why the trash bills are going up. They're going up across the whole state. Just look in the paper. Sacramento's just went up 30% without even food waste yet. Fullerton went up, I think, 50%. So you're going to see city after city facing waste rate increases as we divert 23 million tons of organic waste away from the landfills. As you move tons away from the landfills, guess what's going to happen? The trash going to the landfill rates are going to go up because of lack of tons. So it's one big puzzle. It's hard to figure out, and thank you very much for your support.
Thank you, Bill. And we finally have Nan Drake. Evening, Nan.
Nan Drake, representing E.J. Harrison and Sons, and I live in Ventura. And this has been a long ride, and I think we're seeing the end of it. I think what we've done in Ventura County is astonishing because we've really stayed ahead of the curve. You know, the County of Ventura is the responsible body for siting a commercial compost facility. We didn't see it happen, and we is Agrimen and E.J. Harrison and Sons, and they decided to make that outreach. And so far, we spent $7 million on just permitting. And we are in the last phases. And again, I mentioned this at our last meeting, that the Harrisons are looking at a regional approach for solution. We have the only facility in Ventura County that has both the ability to take care of our solid waste at a landfill that's again local, Tolan, which you don't go to, but many of the other cities do. So we have all the pieces of the puzzle here in Ventura County, and I think we should stay local. And I think that the Harrisons, I'd like to introduce the ones that are in the audience. George Harrison is here from Gold Coast Recycling, the general manager. George. And Danny Harrison, who represents us in negotiating contracts, is here. And also Jim Harrison's son, Mike Harrison, who is our hometown engineer and project manager for all of our building projects, which keeps him very, very busy. So you all receive packets of information, a letter for Jim Harrison, who is home with a cold, which I too am suffering from. And we've been around a long time, 88 years, 50 years ago. We bought a trash company here in TO, and the Newberry Rubbish was born. So again, we are ready to move forward do whatever necessary. We have a proven track record. We're good team players. We've done well here in the county, and we hope that you stay with a county hauler. Thank you.
Thank you, Nan. All right, that concludes our speakers. Dr. Cox, did you have anything to add?
No, I don't.
All right. All right, thank you. All right, lady and gentlemen. So we have a decision before us tonight.
Mr. Mayor, I think there was just one comment from one of the public speakers referenced the valuation on the annual contract. If you could speak to that, Dr. Cox.
Yes,
all right, thank you.
It is $20 million a year.
Yes.
The value of the contract.
$20 million a year, yes. All right, very good. So we do have a decision to make this evening, and as one of the speakers mentioned, we put that decision off because we wanted to give it a little more thought because it is a big decision. And so here we are tonight to either decide whether to go ahead with the memorandum of understanding that we have with Waste Management in Harrison and bring back a final agreement, or authorize staff to process a non-extension and go out to the open market with a request for proposal. And with that, I'd like to open it up for discussion from my fellow council members. Councilmember Engler.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This is a very difficult decision to make. All of us are customers of the waste haulers that we currently have in the city. I, for one, am happy with the service. I don't think it plays out with 97% of people are in favor of our trash haulers. They like our trash haulers. They've been involved in the community. Everything that's laudable about having a business in town. With that said, the other side of the coin is this is a $20 million a year for 15-year franchise that we are exploring. That is a lot of money that we need to make sure that the citizens are getting as good a deal as we can ensure. As I was listening to the speakers, I was struck by how heartfelt many of the comments were. But I don't think if we were to keep things the same, I would expect that the same service would occur. If we were to not keep the things the same and say hire Waste Management to hold the whole city, I would expect things to stay the same in terms of the service. I don't think there would be a difference in the way you would approach your business with Thousand Oaks if you were the exclusive purveyor of the service. I lean toward needing to find out what the open market holds, to be able to turn to our citizens in town and say that we did our due diligence to find out exactly what the market is. And I don't know if we have that information yet.
Thank you. Councilmember McCoy?
I had a question for staff. What would be the cost of the consulting fee to take this out to bid from start to finish?
I'm going to defer to Richard to answer that.
I think you had budgeted approximately $200,000 throughout the whole course. You have a largely drafted RFP. You have a good set of data to work with. It's going to be less than that. That's on the high end. And typically, if you do go out to competitive bid, whoever the council selects, that is a requirement for them to reimburse that cost.
Thank you. And then, do you have any background on Athens Disposal, Santa Paula? I know that went out to bid. I've heard terrible customer service. What do you know about that?
A little bit. I've negotiated with Athens and other parts of Southern California. The Santa Paula one, I think that was actually went out to bid, and Crown was the actual initial winner on that. They since sold their holdings to Recology, and Recology in turn turned that over to Athens. So it's gone through two different haulers since the original proposal.
Was it a good process, or
No,
were they
it was not a good
dissatisfied?
process.
I'm sorry?
It was not a good process. It was basically a low bid. And unfortunately, we would, if you do go out to competitive bid, we'd strongly encourage you to look at more than just the cost.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor Adam. I have a question for Dr. Cox. For an RFP, would that also be for 15 years?
Yes, that is what we would recommend.
Okay. So when you look at it, it's a $20 million per year contract over 15 years. That's $300 million. So the cost of the consulting fee is less than a percent when you look at the 15 years. That said, I had time to research and read the information that was provided by staff. And yes, waste rates will go up everywhere. And that's just really not avoidable. My rate just went up. And I'm a happy waste management customer as well. I have not had any issues. That said, I will restate what I said last December, which is when you have a $300 million contract potentially, it's very important to put that out to bid to make sure that with the market changing and with rates going up by more than 50% commercial over the next 5 years, it's important to find out what is out there. That is the responsibility that we have, that I have as a council member, that when a contract is that valuable, we have to make sure that it is really the best contract that we can earn for the city of Thousand Oaks and its 130,000 residents. I have really not changed my mind and would move that we approve recommendation number 1, which is to authorize staff to issue the notices of non-extension prior to the end of this month and then pursue an RFP.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Jones, comment to the motion?
Yeah, I had a question before I want to make a final decision. And the question is, if we go out to bid, can we use other criteria other simply than price? In other words, may we rate the various haulers on other matters other than, say, the one that has the lowest price?
Absolutely. Price is just one of the criteria. Qualifications, prior history, what they've actually proposed to do in terms of services, their safety record, customer service, transition, all of those things you look at as part of the criteria, not just the cost.
With that in mind, may I go forward with my...
Well, we do have a motion on the floor.
Okay. I'd just like to make a few comments.
Certainly.
Before voting.
Absolutely.
Okay. I didn't know if a motion precluded...
No, not at all.
It just seems to me, I mean, I like both companies. I've known the people involved in both companies for many, many years. My kids went to school with Mike, so I've known him since he was a teenager. And as I said last time we were up, I was a good friend of the man who started Harrison Rubbish with collecting ashes and converting a car into a truck, named Elmo Harrison, who, if it weren't for Elmo, none of these other people would be here tonight. So I have very good relations with both companies, and I love the people involved in them. But it just seems to me, if I can play the devil's advocate for a minute, if we don't have competitive bids, we're really saying free enterprise. The free enterprise system is not a good idea. You know, coincidentally, I was on the council when we decided to go to franchise areas because of the leapfrogging of all these different companies in neighborhoods, which was prevalent when I came here. And we would currently have, I guess, the same 3 haulers if Waste Management had not bought 2 of them out. And I presume that was approved by the council. I'm sure it must have been. Harrison, of course, has been here for 50 years. But I just think that we're not really being fair to the ratepayers if we do not have some type of competitive bid. And this may sound like a heresy to the two trash companies, but I think if we're going to just automatically, approve 15 years at a time and just keep everybody the same, that we ought to be able to see your books. I mean, it's like you're a partner with the city, and I believe that if we don't go out to competitive bids, it would really show that we are not taking good care of our ratepayers. I agree with what Fred had to say, that we have great service right now, but he also, I think, was hinting at the fact that we ought to have competitive bidding. So I haven't exhausted all the things I was going to say, but I think I've said enough. So I'm in favor of going out for a competitive bid.
Thank you, Councilmember Jones. Councilmember McCoy.
I just want to say thank you to the staff for the extra work. And in agreement with Mayor Pro Tem Bill de la Peña, $200,000 is over the course of time, and that it's included in the bid to be returned to the city. I understand that. What I would ask is that you would include what is very apparent to all who have been present in the copious amounts of letters we've received from the public. The community service that both of these organizations have extended to the citizenry of our city. They're more than just a company that picks up our trash, the things that they do, and they're forward thinking. So if that's part of the process and you'd include that, I'd greatly appreciate it. I too am in agreement that bidding is important. And I appreciate all of you coming down tonight. So I'll yield to the remainder of the council.
Thank you, Councilmember McCoy. Well, I think that the waste business is facing some challenges now that they haven't faced in decades, thanks to the state of California. Good challenges, environmentally sound challenges, but challenges nonetheless. Just the fact that the recyclable market has basically collapsed thanks to China. We used to be able to make money on recyclables. Now we got to process them and maybe even lose money. The fact that organic waste has to be processed 75% out of landfills. That means special kind of pickup, not to mention processing machines to accomplish that. I'm curious to see how different companies intend to get that accomplished. Because for me, as the gentleman at the dais said, it's not just about money. Yes, rates are important, but it's about the environment too. And I think I would really like to see some proposals as to how to accomplish some of these assembly bills that are in front of us. And as far as the money, yeah, it's a big contract, $20 million a year. I have to say, we haven't had a request for proposal in decades. I don't think we've ever had one. Probably 30, 40 years. And so I guess it's probably about time. I think we might be able to get some economies of scale based on how many operators we happen to have. I think most important when it comes to the ratepayer, a really transparent process for a request for proposal equals the ability for us to defend the rates. And we all know, as we talked about tonight, the rates are going to go up, and we know that's not necessarily in your control, but they are going to go up, and we have to be able to defend that, why they're going up. And an RFP process will give us that defensibility, I believe. And so I'm going to support Mayor Pro Tem's motion. And
Mayor Adam?
And we have one more comment.
Just one thing I'd like to add.
Yes.
And this is part of the going out to bid. In the audience is our trash engineer for our home that we've had for years. Name another service that gives you a Christmas card every year as they drop it off at your house. Try to put that in the calculations. They know us by name. I mean, it is a remarkable company. And I understand we want to bid this, but I just want to commend, it's the most remarkable service my family's experienced in 20 years. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you, Councilmember McCoy. Councilmember Engler.
Yeah, just to tag along with Councilmember McCoy. In our RFP, thinking about how we're going to go about this, we have these people in the audience. They're not city employees, but they're definitely people who work for the citizens. And I don't know how we can craft it, but to try to appreciate and to recognize the impact that our decisions may make on those folks as well. So that's part of my thinking, is that these people have put a lot of work into our city, and we need to recognize that and take care of them as well.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Mr. Mayor, may I say one more thing?
Just as soon as Mayor Pro Tem's done.
Oh, pardon me.
That's quite all right.
Thank you. To answer your question, I category number 2's customer service transition plan would maybe address that. But I wanted to say that when I had twins in 2005, they are now 14 years old, and when they started to walk, they couldn't wait for the trash truck on a Tuesday morning to arrive, and they would wave at the driver. I don't see the driver here now. I'm not sure if he's still with the company because it's been a while, but that was their highlight in the morning, to see on Tuesday mornings. So we do appreciate the work that you have done, and yes, you do more than just pick up the trash. You actually have a relationship with the residents whom you serve, so I did not want this to go unnoticed.
Thank you. Councilmember Jones.
Well, I don't have a personal relationship with my trash hauler, but I appreciate the fine work that they do, and I am very glad to hear that my fellow council members. I do know my postwoman very well, but not the trash hauler. I really expect that we're going to end up probably with these same two companies. And the question I asked, do we have to take the lowest price? And I heard we don't. So we're going to be able to evaluate this in every aspect. And I think that is going to give them the inside track. Thank you.
Thank you. And you're correct, Councilmember Jones. We don't have to take the lowest rate. And I think we're going to be looking for value. I think it's going to be a competitive, fair, transparent process, and I think the track record of these two companies will certainly be taken into consideration. So if there's no more comments, I'm going to call the motion to a vote.
I just want to...
Oh, sorry.
Councilmember Jones made a quick comment there. I just want to make sure, out of an abundance of clarity here, mentioned ending up with the same two haulers. Can you speak to that in terms of how an RFP process happens?
As we structure this RFP, we would anticipate going out for a single hauler for our service area, again, to maximize the economies of scale that we might achieve, and to allow the maximum flexibility for that hauler in their route scheduling and trucks in town, et cetera. That would be our staff's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Finley.
Well, Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question?
Yes, certainly.
That wasn't my understanding. I heard from our consultant before, that was you, wasn't it? That San Jose has various districts and other cities as well?
Other cities do have a districted system, and they're usually very large cities: San Diego, Los Angeles, San Jose. But typically a city such as yours, it's usually one service provider is the most efficient and provides the best value overall to the city and to your ratepayers.
Well, can we have any input to this process of the structuring the RFP, or are we? I mean, is that just simply a staff?
No, the council, I can speak to that, Councilmember Jones. It's the council's discretion how you want to structure the process. I think all you're hearing from the consultant is the best practice that he would recommend for a municipality of our size.
Well, I would certainly like to have some council input before you make the final decision on the structure of the RFP because I had a different understanding.
There will be council input. However, here, just a moment, Bob, sorry. I think what they're suggesting is that in the RFP process, the most cost-efficient way to have a hauler may well be, in fact, one hauler because of just the economies of scale and the volume that's involved. That is the suggestion. But again, we'll have input into that process. Councilmember Engler.
Yeah, I hope we do have some input. It'd be very nice. I'm just, in pursuing Councilmember Jones's question, for cities of our size, is there any particular advantage to going to multiple districts, or is that mainly for areas that are geographically different, or is it better just to go with a single hauler?
Usually if there's multiple haulers, it's for a much larger geographic area. And they may have the commercial sector with multiple haulers, but usually the residential sector is one hauler.
Just for the council's benefit, what I would recommend and just confirmed with Mr. Finley is it would be staff's approach if the council decides to go with an RFP process that we would return to the council with an item that provides you some clarity in terms of our anticipated structure. The structure that was laid out to you as an example in the PowerPoint, that's an example of what's been done in other locations. We have complete flexibility in that. So be happy to bring that back to the council and you can provide input in that.
I'm sure we could come back with a two-hauler option versus a one-hauler option. But again, I think the one-hauler option is going to give us economies of scale and volume that are going to make rates more competitive. And it's going to be more administratively easy to also work with. But
well, I did press the button.
Go ahead, Ed.
Last week I didn't, but tonight I did. Let me just say, in 1971, I believe we started, and we made 3 franchise districts out of a population of about 30,000. So, and it's worked out pretty well, hasn't it? I mean,
that's what we'll find out.
I really would hold to have 2 districts like we have now.
So noted. And we have Councilmember McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor. Just so noted, I'm scourged in the newspaper for having E.J. Harrison donate to my campaign, but I want to clearly understood that my desire is to keep both haulers because the job is remarkable. I've received nothing from Waste Management. And listen, EJ, keep all your donations. I don't want them. If you want to check back, you can have it. I just like the city having 2 remarkable organizations. And in this bidding process, I would ask that we would consider both. We want to save money. We're going to lose one of these remarkable organizations. That's always been my concern. We go out to bid, I would like it to see at least the option of both still operating. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I think we want to do what's best for the taxpayer, ultimately, and the residents. And if there, did you have something?
Yeah, just, again.
Mr. Powers?
Big decision before the city council, so I'm always as I listen to the dialogue, I want to make sure that out of an abundance of clarity, making points. So this is an extremely complicated matter, as I think everybody recognizes. And part of the reason that the item was put in front of the council in the manner in which it was, which was a negotiated MOU under a structure with 2 haulers that was negotiated as previous ones have occurred, was that two-hauler option. Now we have the ability to structure an RFP process in any manner in which the council decides. But I think it's important that everyone recognize that putting inherent limitations in an RFP process is going to insert some complexities into the process that could impact that process. So I just want to make sure that point is out there, and if there are any additional questions, the council has an opportunity to ask those now.
I think you bring up a very important point. We're going through an RFP process. It'll be our first one in decades. We don't want to restrict it to the point where we don't accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. And so I would definitely be not in agreement that we say we want X amount of haulers. Let's just get out there and see what we can do, and we can look at a number of options. But from my vantage point, I don't want to see any restrictions on an RFP. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor Adam. The point of this whole process and exercise is to get the most value for the residents and businesses of the city of Thousand Oaks. And the most value will most likely be provided by just one service purveyor, not two. When you have two, the cost will increase. So having looked at all of the information presented to us and listened to your testimony as well, an RFP can only be competitive if it's really one company. Otherwise, we might as well just continue with the MOU. Then we're back to square one if we go with either residential and then commercial, or one section of Thousand Oaks and a section of Newberry Park. So if our purpose and goal is to get the best value for the resident of Thousand Oaks, it has to be an RFP, and that will be awarded to just one purveyor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilman Wrangler.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think I agree with Councilmember Bill De La Pena, but there's also the caveat that I still don't think we're at a point where we have the proper information to make a decision on which hauler or what part of the city is going to be covered by which purveyor, or if there's going to be all. We need to go to an RFP so we can get that information and make an informed decision that makes sense for our ratepayers, and hopefully come up with a rate-paying scheme that is less than would have been otherwise. But I think at this point, I don't feel comfortable going out without that information yet. So I would urge us to go to a full RFP with all cards on the table so that we can get a good feel for what's out there and what is the proper course for our city.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Can I just ask?
Go ahead.
I guess I think that council needs some clarification on how you go about, what is the process for an RFP? How do you put out an RFP that has options for a single provider or multiple providers? Can you discuss that with council?
Okay, let me give it a try here. First of all, what we would like to do is go out and define our service area and define our service requirements, and let the market tell us who the best provider for that service is. It does not. It could be several companies working together. We could have a contract with one, and they could decide amongst themselves, we're going to do the commercial because we can do that at the least expensive costs, and company B. I mean, these same two companies, we currently have two separate franchise agreements. We could have a franchise agreement with one of them, and they could actually subcontract with the other. But again, we believe that the best value is to not artificially restrict the area, the service area, or the customer classes, and get the best value for our residents and our businesses. Again, we could segment it by saying the businesses is one hauler and the residential is the other, but why would we do that? It would make more sense to say we want a hauler that does all of these things. What is the market? What will the market bear? What is the best value for the citizens of Thousand Oaks?
Thank you, Mr. Finley. And I'm presuming that is what your motion is calling for, an unrestricted request for proposal.
That is what the motion is calling for.
I think that's important.
And just to add to that, as I mentioned again, our intent would be to come back to the city council and outline what those parameters look like, so the council would have an opportunity to see.
Yes. All right. Are we done with our discussion? It looks like it. So Mayor Pro Tem has a motion on the floor. And do we need to restate the motion? We're pretty clear, right? All right. So let's have a vote.
The motion carries 5-0.
All right, thank you very much. Okay. We are going to move on now to council reports. We'll give the room just a moment to clear. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
All right, let us resume. Councilmember Engler, you have a report for us from the League of California Cities, correct?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last Thursday, I had the pleasure of representing the city at the California League of Cities Policy Committee group that met in Sacramento. The policy group that I am on is the Transportation Public Works group. And some people ask, why would we be interested in doing that? The California League of Cities is our representative in Sacramento. The policy committees set the policy for the League of Cities. So we are able to look at legislation as it's in the drawing board, get our input on that legislation, and hopefully divert some of the more onerous legislation that sometimes Sacramento wants to provide us with. The Transportation Committee, the main thrust of the Transportation Committee right now is protecting the SB1 funds, the gas tax funds, from any diversion to other uses. And so far, we've been successful with that. So I think our time is well spent in going up there, being in on the ground floor of some of these laws that may or may not be enacted, and get our city's input on it. So with that, thank you for sending me up, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for representing us, Councilmember Engler. That's an important league, and it gives us input that we definitely need. Follow-ups from our city manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Annual report, and we have a study session scheduled for that evening relating to the general plan and the topic of housing. Our general plan housing expert, Veronica Tam, will be here to lead that study session for the City Council. Also wanted to mention that we have our next in the series of general plan community forums tomorrow night here in this room. Joe Minikazi will be the guest speaker. The doors are at 6. His speaking engagement will begin at 6:30. I encourage everyone to attend again tomorrow night. Doors at 6 here in this room. That'll be all.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. And Ms. Noonan, if you would announce our closed sessions.
Thank you, Mayor. We have 2 closed sessions. First one is existing litigation, Dos Vientos Community Preservation Association versus City of Thousand Oaks, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9A. And the second one is anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D4.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I need to recuse myself from item 14A.
So noted. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are going to adjourn our meeting in the memory of a very distinguished community member, Ed Lawrence. Ed passed away December 9th at the age of 95. Ed was a professional photographer. His work captured 5 decades of history in the Conejo Valley. His classic photographs of the early days of Thousand Oaks provide a unique historical lens through which we can chronicle our roots and transformation. His pictures into the past offer an amazing perspective on what this area was like 60 years ago. His body of work includes historical photos of the cowboys, the sheep herders, and the ancient oaks that once marked the landscape of the Conejo Valley. Ed took over 17,000 photos from the 1950s through the 1990s, and each image is a local treasure. Ed was a native of Pennsylvania. He moved to California, where he opened the first camera shop in the Conejo in 1959, when the area's population numbered only a few thousand. He quickly learned the fastest routes to reach the best vantage points of the valley below and loved hiking the hillsides with his camera to capture images. In taking one of his iconic photographs called Pork Chop Hill in 1962, Ed waited at the top of a knoll overlooking Albertson Ranch, which is now Westlake Village, and Ed said, "I climbed the hill and I saw clouds starting to form, so I sat there for 3 hours waiting for the clouds to emerge, and I took a picture then, when I thought it was at its very best." A dedicated man. But what Ed loved most in life, other than taking pictures, was his slideshows. He loved to share the stories behind his most famous photographs of Old Thousand Oaks and how things used to be, and the change from a tiny ranching community to an active modern-day city. Ed Lawrence leaves behind a host of friends, admirers, and professional colleagues around California and across the nation. We mourn his passing and extend sincere condolences to his daughter, Lynn Lawrence. Thank you, Ed, and the meeting is now adjourned.